First, China has always adopted a prudent, extremely prudent, and responsible attitude on the issue of nuclear weapons. China has always adhered to a nuclear strategy of self-defense and strictly abides by a policy of no first use of nuclear weapons. We unconditionally pledge not to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapon states or nuclear weapon-free zones. China has always maintained its nuclear forces at the minimum level required for national security. We have no intention of engaging in an arms race with any country. Second, China has always advocated that the promotion of nuclear disarmament must follow the principle of maintaining global strategic stability and ensuring that the security of all countries is not undermined. We should take fair and reasonable, gradual and downward balanced steps. This process should be advanced in a step-by-step manner.
I should add that exactly 0 Chinese nuclear weapons were covered by New START. And as we sit here today, China's entire nuclear arsenal has no limits, no transparency, no declarations, and no controls. The inadequacies of the unilateral constraints imposed on the United States under New START are most critically compounded by the emergence of a third major nuclear weapons power. China has said that its nuclear policy has been the most consistent in the world. That may have been true in the past, but it is not true today.
First, China has always adopted a prudent, extremely prudent, and responsible attitude on the issue of nuclear weapons. China has always adhered to a nuclear strategy of self-defense and strictly abides by a policy of no first use of nuclear weapons. We unconditionally pledge not to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapon states or nuclear weapon-free zones. China has always maintained its nuclear forces at the minimum level required for national security. We have no intention of engaging in an arms race with any country. Second, China has always advocated that the promotion of nuclear disarmament must follow the principle of maintaining global strategic stability and ensuring that the security of all countries is not undermined. We should take fair and reasonable, gradual and downward balanced steps. This process should be advanced in a step-by-step manner. China's nuclear forces are not on the same level as those of the United States and Russia. At this stage, we will not participate in nuclear disarmament negotiations. China believes that countries with the largest nuclear arsenals should fulfill their primary responsibility for nuclear disarmament and further make substantial reductions to their stockpiles in a verifiable, irreversible, and legally binding manner to create conditions for the ultimate realization of nuclear disarmament. When conditions are ripe, all nuclear-armed states should join the negotiation process. Third, China regrets the expiration and invalidation of the New START Treaty. This treaty is vital for maintaining global strategic stability. The international community is concerned that its expiration will negatively impact global nuclear disarmament and the overall nuclear order. We have noted that Russia has proposed that Russia and the United States continue to abide by the core restrictions of the treaty. China calls on the United States to respond positively and handle the follow-up arrangements of the treaty in a responsible manner. We hope that strategic stability dialogues with Russia can be resumed as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add a few points regarding the remarks just made by the US side. Mr. Denano said that we have entered a new era. Indeed, the current global security situation is complex and severe, with hegemonism, power politics, and unilateralism seriously impacting the post-war international order. The United States seeks absolute strategic superiority and spheres of influence. This runs counter to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. It recklessly launches military strikes against sovereign states and stirs up bloc confrontation, becoming the main instigator of intensified international and regional arms races. In fact, a series of negative actions by the US in the field of nuclear arms control is the greatest source of risk to international security. These actions are too numerous to list. Just now, the Russian colleague has explained them in detail, and China is also deeply concerned. Especially the US has invested trillions of dollars to upgrade its triad nuclear forces. It is vigorously developing new types of nuclear weapons. In fact, Mr. Dinano also addressed this aspect just now. Second, it continues to undermine global arms control by exiting key stability pacts like the ABM and INF treaties. Third, it deploys nuclear weapons overseas, strengthens extended deterrence, and seeks to replicate nuclear sharing in the Asia-Pacific, cooperating to transfer weapons-grade nuclear material to non-nuclear states, specifically nuclear submarine deals. Fourth, it's advancing deployment of global missile defense systems and promoting the so-called Global Missile Defense Program. Just now, the US accused Russia of possibly deploying weapon systems in outer space, but what we see is that the US Global Missile Defense Program deliberately plans deployments in space, specifically the deployment of intercept weapons. We are also concerned about the US making repeated irresponsible statements, including
the inadequacies of the unilateral constraints imposed on the United States under New START are most critically compounded by the emergence of a third major nuclear weapons power. China has said that its nuclear policy has been the most consistent in the world. That may have been true in the past, but it is not true today. In 2010, as the United States and Russia agreed to limits in its strategic arsenals to historic lows, Beijing had a relatively small nuclear arsenal, consistent with its approach to deterrence since the earliest days of China's nuclear program. Since then, China used the opportunity of legally binding U.S.-Russian restraint to begin expanding its arsenal at a historic pace, posing a new threat to strategic stability in the global nonproliferation regime. Concerns existed in President Trump's first administration that China might seek to double the size of its arsenal. Not long after the extension of New START in 2021, China's 3 new ICBM silo fields became front-page news worldwide. Even now, after years of public evidence and calls for transparency from many countries here in the CD and elsewhere, China continues to deny the evidence of these sites and the extent of its nuclear weapons buildup. China remains on track to have over 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, and Russia is supporting this buildup by helping China develop the weapons-grade fissile material necessary for its expansion. We are clear-eyed and realistic about the speed, scale, and quality of China's historic military buildup. As stated in the National Defense Strategy, we will deter China in the Indo-Pacific through strength, not confrontation, with the understanding that peace is possible on terms favorable to Americans and acceptable to the Chinese. But China refuses to contribute to disarmament objectives we are all here to advance. China's release of an arms control white paper is insufficient. Its actions do not demonstrate its commitment to nuclear arms control and disarmament. It would be irresponsible and short-sighted to extend limits with the Russian Federation bilaterally and not account for these realities. No longer constrained by the political military circumstances of 2010 and the treaty they yielded, And in response to the destabilizing behavior of these countries, the United States can now finally take steps consistent with our national security strategy and national defense strategy to strengthen deterrence on behalf of the American people and our allies. Militarily, the expiration of New START enables the United States to take parallel steps. We will complete our ongoing nuclear modernization programs that were initiated while New START entered into force. The United States also retains non-deployed nuclear capacity that can be used to address the emerging security environment if directed by the President. Such actions include expanding current forces, diversifying our capabilities, developing and fielding new theater-ranged nuclear forces, and adapting our extended deterrence posture as necessary. I'd now like to address an issue where another disparity exists. Last fall, President Trump instructed the Pentagon to start testing our nuclear weapons, quote, on an equal basis, close quote. Specifically, the President was referring to Russian and Chinese nuclear testing in violation of their respective moratoria on yield-producing nuclear tests. Since the President's statement, we have received many questions about what he meant by, quote, an equal basis, close quote. The annual U.S. compliance report has previously assessed that Russia has failed to maintain its testing moratorium by conducting supercritical nuclear weapons tests. This means taking into account all Russian nuclear weapons, both novel and existing strategic systems, and addressing the breakout growth of Chinese nuclear weapons stockpiles.